Hi, welcome back. I'm so glad you came today to talk about biogeochemical cycles. You know, the water cycle, the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle. And get out some colored pencils or markers and let's bring out your inner artist. Let's draw these cycles, label them out. It's gonna be awesome. Science rocks.
All right, go ahead and open up your Google Drive or Spiral Notebook for notes. And seriously, get out some colored pencils too while you're at it for some awesome cycle sketches. Copy down these 27 vocab words. Remember, they go in ABC order like this. And just come back later and create your own definition of these words. Remember to always use your own words and draw those pictures. So pause this if you need to finish writing down the terms. All right, so biogeochemical cycles. They describe how matter is recycled between the biotic, remember living, and abiotic, non living, parts of an ecosystem. The three main cycles on Earth are the water cycle, which is this one over here, the carbon oxygen cycle, or just the carbon cycle, which is this one, and the nitrogen cycle right here. There are even interactions between the different biogeochemical cycles. So the cycles are not completely separate from each other. So changes in one cycle will likely impact the other cycles. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at each one. The water cycle. So, have you ever left a glass of water out and a few days later observed there was less water in the glass, but you didn't go and pour it out? This is the result of evaporation, like shown in the water cycle. Water also evaporates from lakes and oceans and becomes water vapor in the air. So, this water vapor condenses on dust in the air. See this condensation right here, and it forms clouds. Okay, so further precipitation, here we go, makes small drops that build in size until they fall from the clouds as rain, snow, etc. So the water falls back to the earth and accumulates in oceans and lakes where, evaporation continues. And look at this, plants, trees, they pull water from the ground, okay, and they lose water from their leaves through something called transpiration. I try to remember it. I call it tree sweat. Transpiration, tree sweat, okay? Also, when animals urinate, water is returned to the environment as well. So think about that for a little bit and then go buy yourself a water filter. The carbon cycle starts with a producer. During photosynthesis, energy from the sun is used by plants to convert carbon dioxide gas into energy-rich carbon molecules that the organism can consume. So the photosynthesis arrow should be going straight to the plant because the plant is sucking in and using that carbon dioxide. The consumers feed on producers and use the carbon molecules. When the producers and consumers use the carbon molecules, carbon dioxide is released and returned to the atmosphere. Remember, animals, even we breathe out carbon dioxide. Remember, that's cellular respiration, a product. So, combustion is another big carbon release. It can be natural, like a forest fire, or it can be man made, like burning wood or from a factory that releases it back into the atmosphere. If you look at the one spot that's really pulling the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, that's going to be the plants, the trees, the producers using that in photosynthesis. And the nitrogen cycle. Okay, if you add nitrogen fertilizer to a lawn or to a plant, you may see that they become greener and taller. So, even though the air has a high percentage of nitrogen, plants seem to do even better when they receive this nitrogen fertilizer. So you're like, what the heck? This is because most plants cannot use the nitrogen that's in the air, okay? They use the nitrogen in the soil that has been converted into more usable forms that the plants can suck up and use, okay? So certain bacteria convert the nitrogen from the air into these more usable forms. All right, make sure to take a look at these 2 videos covering the water, carbon, and nitrogen cycles too. Okay, let's practice. Number 1, which statement is true about the elements of the earth? Remember, elements are things like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, the items in a periodic table. So go ahead and pause this and think about it on your own. So, the use and reuse of elements illustrates 2 principles of geology. All right, matter and energy are conserved, and the earth is almost a closed system. All right, so talking about these biogeochemical cycles, you should be able to come up with that Earth's elements are used and reused in different molecules over time. Number 2, which of the following processes returns carbon to the atmosphere? So we have to think about the carbon cycle and which one is returning carbon back to the atmosphere. So look this over, pause it, and see what you come up with. All right, if we look at our answer choices and we're talking about carbon and the carbon cycle, we could cross off evaporation and transpiration as those were in the water cycle. Okay, so you could probably look at cellular respiration and photosynthesis. Okay, so when we talked about the carbon cycle, we talked about how photosynthesis is the biggest thing that is pulling that carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Remember, animals breathe out carbon dioxide, plants suck it in. Okay, and so cellular respiration, during that process, remember, glucose and oxygen combine, and carbon dioxide and water are produced. Okay, so that's us, animals, cellular respiration. We breathe out carbon dioxide, and the carbon dioxide is returned to the atmosphere. So number 2 would be B. Number 3, the diagram depicts the nitrogen cycle. According to this diagram, which of the following contributes ammonia, down here, contributes ammonia to the soil? Okay, so pause this and look it over. All right, A, atmospheric nitrogen is up here, right? And if you follow the arrows down, that goes to ammonia eventually. Dissolved nitrogen in rain, here's the rain. If we follow that down, it goes to ammonia. Urine in dead plants and animals. So urine in dead animals and plants, if you follow that down, it goes to ammonia. So number 3, we would pick D, all of these. Number 4, the diagram depicts the water cycle. Which process is represented by the number 3? So this arrow right here. Okay, so pause this and see what you think. All right, during the water cycle, surface runoff, which would be step 1, flows into rivers, lakes, and streams. So the sunlight causes this water to undergo evaporation. So evaporation would be step 2. The water vapor can also be released from plants during transpiration. Remember, I called it tree sweat. The water vapor remains in the atmosphere until it undergoes something called condensation. All right, so condensation is going to be step 3, where it forms the clouds. And then it returns to the ground in the form of precipitation. So precipitation would be 4. So the question, what is represented by the number 3, is going to be D, condensation. Number 5, in the carbon cycle, carbon is taken in by plants as what? So pause this and see what you think. Okay, through photosynthesis, remember plants need for photosynthesis carbon dioxide, water, and they also need the sunlight, and it's going to yield or produce or make that glucose, okay, and the oxygen gas so we can breathe, okay? So if you look at the question in the carbon cycle, carbon is taken in by plants as carbon dioxide, D, in the process of photosynthesis. Number 6, last one. Models are often used to explain scientific knowledge or experimental results. A model of the carbon cycle is shown here. Which of the following can be determined based on this model? All right, so look your answer choices over and see what you think. All right, let's just go through these. A, both plants and animals, here's a plant, here's an animal, release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere during cellular respiration. All right, so let's talk about this plant here. Plants also take in carbon dioxide during photosynthesis, but in order to use the food produced during photosynthesis, plants actually perform cellular respiration too, which give off carbon dioxide. And you can see that animals, even us, we breathe out carbon dioxide. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and think that it's A, but let's go through the others just to make sure. Let's look at B. The atmosphere, which is up here, is the only reservoir on Earth that can store carbon in any form. Okay, but we're not just looking at the atmosphere in this model. We're looking at carbon in all sorts of places. So we can cross off B. If you go to C, factories do not emit any amount of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Well, look, here's a factory combustion releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So you can mark off C. D, dead organisms and waste products do not play any role within the carbon cycle. So you've got decay and sedimentation down here. This is actually a dead fish, okay? And it's releasing carbon back into the atmosphere. So we were correct with going with A. Okay, after you feel like you have all these cycles down, you should be able to construct models to show the movement of carbon through biological systems and between organisms in the environment. Models should illustrate that the processes of photosynthesis, primarily in plants, and cellular respiration in all organisms utilize carbon compounds to provide energy for life on Earth. Models should also demonstrate that carbon undergoes a continuous process of cycling as various compounds in the geosphere, biosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere of the Earth. So, I challenge you to make a project, a presentation, an experiment, or a model and let your teacher know all about it.